The Influencer's Edge is brought to you by the Rapid Sales Accelerator. If you're ready to skyrocket your sales by 30% or more in just 90 days, then you need to claim your free training right now. You'll learn 4 words that will compel your prospects to trust you like they were children within the first 3 to 5 minutes of any conversation across any platform and any medium. You'll learn how to give your prospects objection amnesia, to crush objections like, I need to talk to my spouse, or I need more time to think it over, or it's too expensive. If you'd like to claim your free training now, go to www.paulrossbook.com. Do it before your competition does it now. Thank you for tuning in to the Influencer's Edge, where you get the latest breakthroughs, cutting-edge insights, tools, and techniques so you can leapfrog over the pack in sales, influence, and persuasion. Remember to visit our website at www.theinfluencersedge.com to enjoy even more great episodes like this one. We look forward to seeing you again on the Influencer's Edge Show.
Welcome back to the Influencer's Edge. This is the show that colors outside the lines, disconnects the dots, and thinks outside, say it with me, audience, the box. That's right. Notice my cool shirt. Just call me Zaddy. That tells you this is an unconventional show. We certainly have an unconventional guest who's entertained by my sense of humor. Either that or he's been smoking a bowl or both. I don't know. Would you welcome Captain Retired Deven Rodriguez?
What's up, Paul? Man, this is a true honor to be here with you. Yes, your shirt is hilarious. It is not because I ingested anything prior to our conversation. So I'm extremely happy to be here, Paul. This is a show I've been really looking forward to all week. So thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. I'm very curious to know. So you served as a first of all, thank you for your service. You served as a captain. Just what was your specialty, sir? I know you actually were Army intelligence and were a spy, but tell us what you're covering.
Yeah, no. So I was actually one of the guys that the spies make fun of, which are the infantry guys, the ground troops. So I was an infantry officer. So we would rely heavily on the intelligence guys to give us intel. So yeah, when I was in the military, I actually spent the first 2.5 years doing that. And then I got fortunate enough to come down to Southern Florida, which is where I got into recruiting. So recruiting was super interesting, Paul, because as you could imagine, it's kind of like sales, but just to recruit people to join the military rather than to, join your program or your business or whatever. So spent a couple of years in the infantry, and then I retained, and in the military, you retain that as your specialty. But then I got like a really cool assignment to come do recruiting in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which is like unheard of in the military. So, I got to finish out my last 1.5 years or so in the military doing that. And then it's been about another year and 2-3 months since I've gotten out. So it really hasn't been that long at the time that we're recording this, but man, it was definitely a journey for sure.
Holy fuck. Before we get into what you do, which astonishes me. I'm just gonna, I sat with this and we talked beforehand. Just transparently, I'm a client of Deven's, and an extraordinarily pleased client, a blown away client. No, kitty, get over there. My cat wants to say hello to you. Before we get into what you do, how much of your military training do you think has helped you assemble the team that you've had and get them to follow in line? I don't want this to sound like an infomercial. I'm going to push back on a lot of what you have to say in a minute. But could you have done what you've done and provided the service you provide without your military training?
Well, I'm sure to a certain extent, yeah. I mean, partially, I think, of course, I think to a certain level, I'm sure that I could have. But I think that the military training gave me certain attributes which carry over. And Paul, I'll share a quick story with you. I remember one time I was out at a training event in Savannah, Georgia, in the middle of the woods, and it was pouring rain, thunderstorming, and my job at the time was I was like I was at like the bottom of the totem pole. So they had me do all of the grunt work. So it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was responsible for going out and disconnecting or turning off all of the electronic targets that we had out there. So pretty much like the infantry guys would go out and they would, practice their shooting with the targets. And the targets were electronic. So at the end of the night, in order for the battery to not die so that we can use them the next day, I would have to go out and turn them out. Well, it just so happened that the targets were literally about a mile away, and we were in the middle of the woods, and it was just downpouring like I've never seen before, still to this day. So I was with a couple of the officers who were senior in rank to me at the time, and they were like, "Nah, let's just forget about it. Let's just go back. Everything will be fine. They're not going to die." So I was like, "All right, cool. You don't got to tell me twice to go back into my tent rather than being out in this rain." So I went back to the tent, went back to bed. The next morning, all I get waken up by was someone screaming my last name, Rodriguez. And it was Captain Rogers. And Captain Rogers is like the epitome of what like perfection looked like. Like no exaggeration. He looked like Captain America, was extremely well spoken. His hair was always perfect. He just like looked the part. Like when you think of somebody in the movies that plays a military figure, it's him. So anyways, he calls me over, and this is why I share this story, because this is how I think it relates back to what we're talking about. He says, "Deven, right now," he says, "there's 3 types of people, Deven." He says, "What happened with those targets?" I told him the story. I said, the other officers, they said, just, don't worry about it. We'll just do it in the morning. They pretty much threw me on the bus and under the bus, and they just blamed me. But anyways, he said, "Deven, listen, that's not the point. What I need you to understand is that there's 3 types of people." And this goes back to exactly what you just said, Paul. He said, "There's the person that looks at the problem and they say, that's the problem, and they do nothing about it." He says, "There's another type of person that sees a problem and says, that's a problem, and I'm going to fix it." And he says, the third type of person is the person that sees something that can become a problem and fixes it before it ever becomes one. And that, more than anything, exactly what he just said there. He said, and funny enough, he was like, "You're being the first kind of person, that person that just sees problems and does nothing about it." I was like, damn, wow. So now as we look at business, for me, it's like, yes, of course, the things that we're doing now, a lot of it comes from the military, more so the mindsets that I learned from my experience in the military. It's what I try to apply with the team.
Cool. So let me read your batshit boring biography. No, I'm just joking with you. Let me read your bio. So Deven Rodriguez is the founder and CEO of podcastguest.io, the premier podcast booking agency, but that's not all you are. And I really want to make this distinction in a minute. For high-level service-based business owners, you built your agency on a simple belief, and this is so true. I've found this in the past. I have been hired podcast agencies. Being booked on podcasts is only half the battle. That's I think a minor statement. It's far more than half the battle. What matters is turning those appearances into actual clients. That's why he developed the proprietary podcast conversion system, a 4-phase framework that helps clients not just land top podcast spots, but actually convert listeners into paying customers. I have often said, and would like your feedback on this, the number of downloads and listeners is a vanity metric.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And Paul, that's one of the things when a client comes to work with me, sometimes they get really caught up in the fact that this podcast doesn't have, this is the big one, this podcast is not a top 100 ranked podcast. Little do they know that you could just pay money to manipulate the rankings of Apple Podcasts. This podcast doesn't have 100,000 Instagram followers. Little do they know you could just go out and buy all your Instagram followers. So it's like a lot of people focus on the wrong metrics. So instead of looking at it simply from a numerical perspective of how many downloads, how many views, how many followers, the only real thing that it comes down to, Paul, is really 2 things. Well, really one thing that branches out into 2 different parts, which is how many of the right people is that podcast going to have? Now, when I say right, for any business owner that's listening to this, what I mean is 2 things. Number one, someone that is already interested in what you do or interested in the end result that you help people achieve. So if you, let's say you help people with sales as an example, if you get on a sales podcast, you know that everybody in that audience is inherently interested in sales. But alternatively, if you go on a podcast that's a general business podcast, I'm just speaking in pure generalities right now. See, the thing is that those people that are on that general business podcast, although they're not talking about sales every week on their show, what are they looking to do? Grow their business. And what you have is a vehicle that helps them grow their business. So with that being said, when I say right people, first thing is we're getting in front of people who are interested in what we do or the end result. But more importantly, number two, this is a big distinction. They have the financial capability and willingness to pay you for what you're worth. Right? Because I always ask people rather, Paul, I say, hey, listen, you want a bunch more leads? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, if they're all broke, you still want them? They're like, I don't know about that one, So with that being said, it's also a big distinction when you're looking at the type of podcast that you're looking to go on. It's the quality of the audience from a sophistication level. In other words, if you serve enterprise level clients, you don't want to go on a business podcast that's for beginners. It's a great show. Don't get me wrong. It's right for the right person, but it's not going to be right for you if you're looking to attract your ideal client. So I'm on the same page as you, Paul. I do not buy into vanity metrics whatsoever. But unfortunately, and this is the thing, if people are listening to this that I really want to break them out of, is the fact that don't follow what everybody else is doing. Everybody else, and Paul, this drives me crazy, man. I have clients of mine that prior to coming to work with me, they've spent $25,000 on a single podcast episode because they had a lot of social followers. However, you know what they didn't do? They didn't check to verify if those followers were real. They didn't ask the podcast host for real numbers of their show. So it's like people are just making decisions based off of vanity rather than actual audience alignment, which is the true metric, the true variable of what they must look at before determining if they want to go on a show.
Let's break this down for a second, because you said audience alignment, and you mentioned, of course, the most important thing is their ability to pay for your program. I get it. That's true, but there are other dynamics in play. And one of the things that you do with your clients is to get them to really get granular, get laser on who is their ideal client. Assuming the client has enough money, that's not enough. There has to be a specific, well-phrased, well-stated problem and a call out to who it is you want to help. Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
So,
yeah, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Paul. No, I was going to say, without that, you're just going to go on podcasts and you're going to speak to nobody, right? Because the thing is ultimately a message that's designed to speak to everybody is going to speak to nobody at all. So with that being said, what I always tell people is there's a couple of different things. Number one, if you got to get really good at identifying what are the symptom level problems and the core level problems that your ideal clients are going through, right? So when it comes,
can you help us? I'm sorry. What is the difference, the distinction between a symptom level and a core level?
Yeah, I'll give you a great example of it. So a symptom level of a lot of businesses in today's age is I'm not getting leads, or we're not having really good sales, or we're not closing the way that we used to. Well, that's the symptom. And what do a lot of business owners do? They try to address the symptom because they think that is what is the problem. But actually, what is the problem, in my opinion, is that trust in the marketplace is at an all-time low, where people have been burned time and time again by these companies that promised them the world but couldn't deliver. So now that sense of trauma that they have gone through based upon their past experience is now being projected onto you as a business owner who's trying to get them to, you're saying, hey, give me $10,000. And they're like, oh my God. And psychologically, they feel such a sense of risk. There's such a high perceived risk in exchanging their money for a service that they don't even know if it's worth it. So that's why it's harder to close. That's why it's harder to get leads in today's economy, because people are extremely skeptical. So that's just one example where on the surface level, the symptom is a decrease in sales numbers, increase in advertising costs. But at the core root of it, it's if you solve the problem that you need to become the most trusted person in the market, that's going to make your ads cheaper. It's going to make your sales increase. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. So unpacking that a little further, and then we could get to some of the questions that you submitted. But unpacking that a little further, I remember one of the things that really struck me when I went, I'm still going through your program. It's not a process that ends when you start booking podcasts. One of the things that really hit me is you had a training on the different levels of marketplace. There's level one, level two. Can you go through just a few of them? Because
Yeah.
everybody thinks that their marketplace will trust them,
Yeah, of course.
even though the market has become saturated and they trust no one. Everyone thinks they have some magic power to suddenly create that trust, which is bullshit. So
Well,
talk about the different levels of market.
Well, Paul, the reason why people have that misconception, it's not due to any fault of their own. It's just due to the fact that people that try to sell them things got them to believe that they're a unique snowflake that's just different than everybody else. And, they don't apply by the same rules of everybody else, right? Because they are all being sold, hey, start this business online, do these other things. So, of course, the people that are believing these things, I was one of those people because I just bought these programs, read these books where it's just like, hey, buy my $25,000 coaching program where I'm going to teach you how to build your business. Of course, I got to think that I'm a special snowflake. So with that being said, though, you don't have to stay that way. And when I started to understand this, what I'm going to walk you through with the 5 levels of market sophistication, it changed everything. And it comes from a book, Scientific Advertising. It's an old book, but the author of it talked about the 5 stages of market sophistication. Now, stage 1 of market sophistication, I'm going to break it down in super layman's terms. Stage 1 is when a new product enters the market. It's when something hits the market for the first time. Nobody's really ever heard of it before. And people are like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. This is so cool. It's like when Teslas first came out. It's like, oh my God, I want a Tesla. This is the best thing ever. And in that market, trust isn't required. And it's not required because it's brand new. It's flashy. It's shiny. I want one of those. It's really easy. So all you have to do in order to win in a marketplace like that is you just need to be the first mover. This is what people refer to as the first mover advantage. Stage 2 is now when people see what you're doing, and now there come a couple of people into the marketplace. Now there's Tesla, there's Lucid, and there's like 2 other companies. And now people are starting to see a couple of different options. But in order to win in a level 2 sophisticated market, all you need to do is pretty much outspend your competition or do more marketing than everybody else so that you're just the person that they see.
Right.
Level 3 or stage 3 is now where there's a bunch of different competitors. And at level 3 is when skepticism and a sense of distrust starts to enter the marketplace because now people are getting pitched on a consistent basis. They're hearing different offers. Now they're buying this one. Oh, I got burned by that one. And that's where skepticism enters the market, where there's multiple players, multiple offers. Then there's level 4 or stage 4. Stage 4 is where now there's tons of people in the space. There's a big, big sense of distrust. And now in order to win in a marketplace like this, you need to be perceived as being incredibly different than everybody else.
Right.
But then there's where we are right now, which is a level 5 sophisticated market where skepticism is just rampant, where people have invested so much money, tried so many things, it didn't work. And what that does is on a psychological level, it decreases the level of certainty that people have that if they invest in something, that it's going to be worth their money. So now the thing that we need to understand is if we're operating in this marketplace, Paul, we have to abide by these rules. We need to play a new game. And the foundation of that game is that whoever can build the most trust with their audience will win. Because here's the thing. I'll go one layer deeper than this, Paul, if I can.
Yeah.
Trust is so important because the thing that we're trying to optimize for, if people are listening to this, don't take away one other thing, then what I'm going to say, this is extremely important. The reason why we focus on trust is because it creates a sense of psychological safety where we say, okay, if I invest this money, I believe that this is going to be worth it. I believe that this is going to get me the result. So trust creates a sense of psychological safety. And if you feel safe with somebody, that is when you give them money. Example, Alex Hormozi. People love Alex. I love his stuff too. He sold $106 million of like books and courses over a 2 or 3 day period. Why? Because people trusted him and his brand so much. But to come full circle with this, Paul, the foundational element of trust is TIME, time. Right? So what we need to do in our marketing as business owners is increase the amount of time that we allow prospects to have with us before we ever ask them for any sort of commitment. Because when that happens, they come to the conclusion within themselves that they want what it is that we have. Why? Because we're not sitting there trying to say, give me all of this money. And we're trying to overcome their objections, and it's getting combative and doing all these different things. Instead, they just spend 60 minutes. So I love podcasts. They spend 60 minutes with you. And if you know how to structure the conversation in a way where it leads people psychologically to making you the obvious option, at the end of it, they're like, you know what? Yeah, I think Paul's the guy for me. He has the specific solution to my specific problem. So yes, those 5 levels of market sophistication. Now we're at a place where there's rampant skepticism. People don't know who to trust. And what we need to be doing is getting people to spend as much time with us prior to entering a sales conversation, because that's going to increase the level of safety and certainty that they have in their mind, which is obviously going to make it more likely that they buy.
Absolutely true. And let me push back with something if I can, because I like pushing back.
Bring it on, baby. Bring it on.
I'm going to bring it on. Just don't you worry, Captain. Here's what I want to push back on. People don't have a lot of time. People are saturated. People are distracted. People have very little attention spans due to smart devices. They're bombarded with FaceTime and Instagram and Telegram and you name it. So how do you incentivize them along with the podcast? I get it, the podcast, but even doing the podcast is not necessarily enough. So how do you get them to continue to consume enough content and enough exposure to you?
Yeah, great point.
That trust.
Yeah, great point. So Google came out with a study a few years ago. They dubbed it the 7-11-4 rule, Paul. So what that meant was that what Google did was they wanted to take a look, and they wanted to create a study that discovered or analyzed what does it take the average consumer to make a purchase in today's digital age, something along the lines of that. It was really fascinating. What they found was that before someone comes to the place where they're ready to make a buying decision, it takes that person consuming 7 hours on average, 7 hours worth of your content across 11 different touch points. So they sit down today, they watch it next week, tomorrow, etc. And then across 4 different platforms: Instagram, podcast, YouTube, Twitter, as an example. So what's the first piece of that? 7 hours. So what does that mean? That means it's not enough to do just one podcast. That means you need to be consistently going on podcasts. That's just one example of a podcast. But I'll tell you why it's my favorite, Paul, because something that you said earlier, you said people are bombarded by FaceTime and Instagram, and I'm going to scroll and watch cat videos and do all of these things. But people make time for the things that are important. And the things that are important, if you really think about it, Paul, in today's day and age, the things that are important to people are not podcasts or interviews. It's specific podcasters, specific interviewers, specific media channels. Think about it. There's some podcasts out there that I personally listen to on a consistent basis. So you're right. I'm not going to go listen to a bunch of different random podcasts, but I am going to go tune into the podcast that I specifically resonate with and listen to on a consistent basis. So the question then is, okay, how do we figure out which podcasts those are, and how do we get access to those shows?
Yeah, I want to know that, because pause a minute. Your team is really fucking good at that. I'm not making any money from this. He's not giving me any special favors or attention. I would refuse it out of integrity anyway. I really would. I do have integrity, whether you fucking believe me or not. I do. So, you do. So how does your team, let's see, Evan, John, I'm thinking of the other guy's totally forgettable. But anyway, I'm kidding. How do they go about matching your unique offer, whatever it is, to the type of podcast that you would do best with?
Yeah, absolutely. So
there's got to be a system there.
There is a system, right? So ultimately, it sounds like it's like, how do we get you on podcasts that are aligned with with your offer and your ideal client, right?
Because you fucking made me go through hours of crafting, you bastard, crafting my unique avatar and then my
Yeah.
unique podcast offer. And I cursed you under my breath. No, I didn't. I thought I'm going to do what's necessary. I'm done losing.
Yeah.
So
So
how do you do all that?
you're spot on, right? Because everything that we do, if you are not clear on who it is that you serve and how you serve them, the core problems, et cetera, you're just going to go on podcasts and you're not going to speak in a way where you truly resonate with them to a point where they feel like you understand them. And that's the thing in today's economy, Paul. More than anything else, people want to feel understood. Because here's the other part of the equation. Although we're so connected via the internet, we're also so lonely. Meaning, if a business owner is listening to this and they're having a tough week, a tough month, I'm sure you've been in this position. You kind of feel like you're the only one.
Yep.
You know, it's like, why am I not the one getting sales? Why am I not getting enough leads? And you feel like that's just a you problem because every time you open up your phone, you see somebody else just bought a new Lamborghini. And you're like, wow, that person's killing it. So it can be very lonely to be a business owner or just a person in today's age. So the thing that we are yearning for, the thing that we crave, arguably more than anything else, is for someone to come along and make us feel like we are not the only person. So with that being said, if we understand that that's someone's psychological desire, and think about it, it goes back to evolution, right? We all want to be included in the pack. But when you feel lonely, you feel excluded because when you open up your phone, you look at everybody else and you think to yourself, well,
and it's
why?
A survival threat. It's a survival
exactly,
threat.
Exactly. Right. And it keeps, and I've been in that spot too, where it just keeps you in a perpetual loop of just depression and anxiety and questioning yourself. So with that being said, to bring it full circle, step one in the process, we have to get clear on your offer, your ideal client, because if we don't do that, you're going to have a great conversation on a podcast, but you're not going to make people feel understood. And that is when people convert. So understanding that, then how do we actually go about getting these podcasts? Okay. So first thing is, Paul, for you to understand and everybody listening, we've been doing this for over 3 years now. Okay. So with that being said, I started this company doing this for free for one guy in particular that was a really big name back in the day. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So his name was Tanner. And I went and I said, Tanner, hey man, I want to get you booked on podcasts. Because I had I was in that position where I had negative $231 on my bank account. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. I was in the military. So I had a nice stable income, thankfully, but I was like investing it on all of these different courses. And I said, Tanner, listen, I really want to get you booked on podcasts. And he's like, man, I'm not paying you for that crap. I was like, I don't want to get paid. I just want to try to see if I could do this for free for you. I just have an idea. Sure enough, he had about 500,000 Instagram followers. So I knew it would be relatively easy. I didn't have any system, no process. But guess what started to happen? I reached out to some people and they were like, who else do you have for me? And then I got another client, built some other really good relationships. So step one is we have a really big network and Rolodex of podcast hosts that whenever I say, hey, Paul Ross, sales trainer, I know he has to go on that podcast. And that podcast host already trusts me because I brought them so many other great people in the last 3 years. But on top of that, once we identify the podcast, and the first thing we do before I ever go out and get you on a podcast, Paul, we really take the time, and this is not just me, but this is Evan, John, everybody that works with you. We take the time to really step into the shoes of the person that you're looking to reach. Because only when we do that can we identify what podcast they are spending their time on. Otherwise, I'm just going to be like, yeah, let's just get them on this random sales podcast. But if I don't understand their core problems, their core desires, what they've tried in the past, why they can't get to where they are, then I'm never going to be able to identify the shows. So that's the first thing is boom. We have to pinpoint, target those shows rather than taking like a shotgun approach. After that, that's when we go and secure those interviews because we have the relationships with those podcast hosts that a lot of the clients we work with wouldn't be able to get on by themselves because they just don't have access. They would have to send the pitches. They wouldn't hear nothing back because they get other 500 pitches a day, et cetera. But here's the secret sauce. Before we ever bring you a podcast, what you don't see on the back end is that we've actually developed, thanks to the use of AI, we've developed our own proprietary AI matchmaking software, meaning that before we ever bring you a show, we run it through the software that we've built, and it takes that podcast and it compares it to the people that you're looking to reach, and it runs it through 3 criteria. First of which is what we call audience alignment. Is this podcast in direct alignment with your ideal client? Check. If it's not, we're not going to present it to you. Second thing, topic alignment or topic relevance, meaning does this podcast talk about topics that are similar to what your ideal client would be interested in? And then number 3, host and show quality, meaning is this a podcast that's actually going to help you show up in a way that's going to improve your brand versus go on a podcast where it's just some dude that just started last week in his mom's garage. No offense to those people, but if you're a business owner and you're looking to place your time in somewhere, well, you want to make sure that you're doing it in a place where it's going to give you the biggest return for your investment, not only of your money, but your time. So that is how we go about securing those shows, identifying those shows, and ultimately bringing them to you. Now, here's the last piece, Paul. We always give our clients, we give you the ability to say, hey, I don't want to go on that podcast. All we ask is, hey, give us a really good reason why so we can get better for you, right? So that's the process that we take, Paul, to get those podcasts. And that's why you've probably had some of those moments where like, oh my God, how'd you get this show? And it's because we have relationships with those podcasters that, quite frankly, it's kind of hard to come by.
In fact, and one of my responses is, holy fucking fuck me in the brown starfish. Yes, yes, yes. See, this is not a censored show. We don't censor because it's not a family audience. I think people tune into this to hear my wacko personality as much as my ability to interview. All right. So, and transparently, one of the things I want to say is, this is a fuck ton of work on your client's part. This is not just you do the work of getting us on the show, but you also have a massive amount of content on this school platform that it's our responsibility to learn. So this is a lot of work for your clients as well. I'm being transparent for people who are considering it. You'll hold the hand, but you don't do the work, and occasionally I get a swift kick in the ass. But that said, please walk us through your 4-phase podcast conversion system. Just talk to us about this, because this is the meat and potatoes, the gravy in terms of how people convert listeners and viewers into actual paying clients.
Yeah. And you're right, Paul. When it comes to the work that we have our clients do, of course, some clients are going to take a little bit longer than others. There's going to be a little bit more work required, et cetera, right? So it's really dependent on the client, like what exactly is needed in terms of how much work it takes. But you're right, like absolutely. It's going to take some work on the client's behalf, certainly. Because if you want to get the most out of it, podcast isn't something like where you just run ads and like, even if let's say you hired an ads agency, you're still going to have to film the ads. If they're not good enough, you're going to have to film them again. So there's going to be work in anything that you do. Even
I get
done, So with that being said, the 4 parts of podcast conversion, ultimately, the biggest misconception, Paul, people think is if I just go on podcast, then I'm going to make a bunch of money. Well, if that was the case, then everybody that went on shows would be like a deca millionaire. They're not. Most people that go on podcasts, even like my big name clients that I work with, they don't make any money. Or sometimes they do, but they're leaving so much on the table because they don't understand these 4 things. Okay, so let's rock through it. Here's the first thing. Big misconception people think, Paul, is in order for me to monetize my podcast, I just have to be a charismatic, really good storyteller. I have to be an expert, and I need to, get the audience to think that I'm relatable. Sure, all of those things will be helpful, no doubt. But it's not the thing that's going to get person to the point where they are ready to make a buying decision. Why? Because podcasts are an inherently different vehicle of conversion than anything else. Just like paid advertising is a different vehicle of conversion than podcasting. But what people try to do is that, well, how does the quote go? You try to fit a round peg into a square, whatever. You get what I'm trying to say, right? So with that being said, when people go on podcasts, instead of learning how to optimize their performance on podcasts in a way that is synonymous or synchronous with the vehicle, aka podcast, what they do is they just go on, tell their story, and just treat it like a normal conversation. And that's why conversations for most people on podcasts don't turn into conversions. Why? Because they do not know how to structure a podcast conversation in a way where it gets the person on the receiving end of that message to come to the logical conclusion that it is that they need what it is that you have. So with that being said, step one of our process to being able to convert at a high level is understanding. We have a framework to it. We call it conversion conversations. How do you turn a conversation into a conversion? So with that being said, what we need to talk about are things like, how do we properly introduce ourselves on a podcast so that we get the audience on a subconscious level to identify that they need what it is that you have so that they actually stay and listen? How do we craft our talking points in a way where we simultaneously get the audience to understand why everything that they've tried up until this point hasn't worked and why our thing is different, right? All of these different points that really have a science behind them. So that's step one, is we need to be able to structure the conversation in a way where that person is ready to make a buying decision and they view you as a specific solution to their specific problem. Second step in that process then is going to be to create what we call your podcast exclusive offer.
Great.
And when I talk about a podcast exclusive offer, this is the big thing to consider, Paul, because I know that there's some people out there, there's some skeptics that are listening to this, and they're probably like, oh, when I go on a podcast, I tell people to go grab my free book.
I used to do that. I paid someone so much fucking money, and you know how many sales I got from that?
Yeah. Right. And Paul, it's not your fault, man. But it's like understanding the psychology of what gets people to take action. That's the thing that's missing from a lot of these other programs that are out there, is they're going to tell you to go put together a lead magnet, and they're going to tell you to go tell your audience at the end of the episode, hey, go grab the free book that I put together. But
no one, in my experience, just let me step in. No one reads them. They put them in their Google documents, and then they forget all about it.
Sits in a Google Drive, of course.
Yeah.
So the point is what we want to do is, when we're on podcasts, we want to create what we call a podcast exclusive offer, meaning that we want to create an offer on podcasts that gives people a compelling reason to act right now. What do most people do when they go on podcasts, Paul? Hey, go book a call on my website. Go visit the website. Go to my landing. It sounds very generic, and it sounds like everybody else. So you can give God's greatest performance, and sure, some people are going to take action, but you're going to miss out on so many opportunities because you did not create a compelling reason for that person to stop whatever it is that they are doing in order to get what it is that you said that you had to offer. That's two. We have to create a podcast exclusive offer that gives people a compelling reason to take an action right now. Part three. This is where the rubber meets the road, is what is the actual back-end systems that are going to take the traffic that is generated or the interest that is generated from your offer and turn it into a booked call on your calendar or a registration for your webinar, whatever type of sales event you have. So with that said, what most people do is they say, go grab my offer. They go, they input their name, email, phone number, and then it sends them to a generic thank you page that says, thank you, check your inbox. And then what they think is going to work is what they're told is they just read Russell Brunson's book, .com Secrets, where now they have to send them a nurture welcome sequence.
Oh, I used to try that too. Guess how much stuff I sold?
How much? Yeah, none, right? So,
Nothing.
but Paul, like the thing is that stuff doesn't really work anymore.
It used
to. Because people, it used to, yeah. But now people, like you said earlier, are inundated with so much information that they just like immediately forget about it. They don't read your emails, because what people think is they get all excited, right? They're going to read my emails and then they're going to like magically book a call and buy my stuff. That happens very, very, very rarely. But it doesn't have to be that way. There is a better way. The better way to that is to have a system in place where as soon as they opt in for what it is that you are offering them, on the very next page, you give them an opportunity, but you frame it in a very special way. I'm not going to go out and say what that is, Paul, because there's going to be some, you know what I've noticed recently, Paul? There's a lot of people out there copying me now. Okay. So I'll be very careful with what I say.
Yep. That's a sign of success. Good.
You want to structure it in a way where the next step for that person to take is to schedule a call. Because here's the thing, when they just got done listening to a podcast, they're the hottest that they will ever be. So with that being said, why in the world would we want to delay the amount of time that it takes for that person to speak to the sales team or to speak to you as a business owner? No, we want to get them on there as quickly as possible. So we want to go from there where we give them the offer. The next step, we allow them to book a call with us, but only do so in a way where they book a call if they are a qualified lead. So we have to have an application process in the process of it, because here's the other thing. You don't want to be spending your time with people that can't afford what it is that you have. Going back to what we talked about earlier with financial willingness and capability. So
and
that's
one more thing I can add to that, to pile on time. Let's say they do have the money, but they're not the decision maker or the business owner. You're just going to be jacking off.
Yeah. And then it's going to turn into, okay, I'll send you an email, and then you never hear from the person again. Okay. I hate that. Then the last piece of the puzzle. Now that we do that, listen, one part that we can't control here is going to be selling. I can't hop on the phone and sell for my clients as much as I wish I could. But the thing that we can do is show you the last part of the process, which is what we call content distribution, which all comes down to the fact that the number one thing that most people get wrong from podcasts is they think that the most valuable part of the podcast is the podcast itself, but it's not. It's how you can take the content from the podcast and redistribute it outside of podcast format onto other platforms.
Correct.
But the thing that people think is, I got it. I'm just going to take the podcast and I'm going to put it inside of Opus Clip, and then I'm going to go and create clips and put them online. Now that's good, better than nothing, but it doesn't take into consideration this fact. The fact is that people prefer to consume content in different ways, meaning some people like to read. Some people like to watch long videos, short videos, medium length videos. That's why Dave Ramsey has something that he calls Ramsey Highlights, which are like 3 to 10 minute clips from an entire podcast. But also, not only that, your podcasts are the number one thing that you can do if you run paid advertising or if you have a sales team. You can leverage the content from the podcast inside of your organic marketing, which is what we just talked about, and your paid marketing, where now your podcast clips become your best performing ads. Now your sales team uses the content from the podcast in the sales process and sends it to the prospect before the call, so that we can increase the amount of time that they spend with us, which is going to increase the level of trust, which is going to increase the level of safety, which is going to increase the probability they buy. So there's so many ways that we can leverage the content from the podcast that will multiply the amount of money that you make from the show. So that's the last piece. So just to recap, number one, we have to be able to structure the conversation in a way where the person that is listening to the podcast comes to the logical conclusion that you're the specific solution to their specific problem. 2, we got to create a podcast exclusive offer that gives people a compelling reason to take the action right now. 3, we need to have what we call the back end selling systems in place that is designed to take that traffic and turn it into someone that is on your calendar. And 4, we need to be able to take the content and redistribute it outside of podcast format so that we can multiply the number of people that can interact with our brand and ultimately give us money.
Other than that, it's easy.
Yeah, other than that, no big deal, right?
We are actually almost at an hour mark because you've been a fantastic guest. Now, here comes the money shot. I know my audience is going to want to stay in the conversation with you. So what is the best way to do that?
Yeah. So, Paul, I've listened to a bunch of episodes of your podcast up until this point. So I want to encourage the audience to do one thing before I make it anything about me. For those of you that are listening to this podcast, please go and leave Mr. Paul Ross a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast and Spotify, because that is the thing that helps Paul and this podcast get more discovered so we can help more people. So that's the first thing. But how you guys can find me is very simple. Paul, you're constantly, the one thing you said to me before this podcast, you're like, I'm no BS. I'm going to challenge you because I genuinely care about the people that are listening to this podcast. So I figured that I would come on and share that same sentiment of over delivering with your folks as well. So I've created something that is exclusive to the audience and the people that are listening to this. But before I tell you guys exactly what it is, let me just tell you a little bit about who it's for. So this is for the person that's already established business owner. They have clients coming through the door. Maybe they're relying on referrals. Their paid advertising costs are increasing. Their sales team isn't getting as many yeses as they want. And ultimately, they feel like they're the best kept secret in the industry, where they know that they have the best stuff, but they're not the best known, and it drives them freaking crazy. Okay. The thing ultimately that is required to win in today's day and age is to build trust at scale. And I believe podcast is the vehicle to do that. So what I'm going to do for you guys, I just have one thing. That's all I got. One thing that I believe is genuinely the most valuable thing that I do have, because you asked me a very, very interesting question earlier on, Paul. You said, how do you get these podcasts? Well, guess what? I have them all in a database. And in that database, I have all of their contact information, everything from A to Z that you would need in order to reach these people. So with that being said, if you guys want access to my private network of podcast hosts and all of their contact information, so all you have to do is reach out to them and say, hey, would love to be on your podcast. I'll actually give them one more thing, Paul. I'll actually give you guys the exact scripts we use to get our clients booked on podcasts. So I'll show you how to craft yours in a way where podcast hosts can't say no to you. So if you guys want that, you can just go to my Instagram. That's why I prefer people to reach out to me. Go to my Instagram, which is at Deven, Deven. That's Deven, Deven, Deven Rod. And just send me the keyword Paul. Okay. Paul. So that I know you specifically came from Mr. Paul Ross's podcast. Paul, you know, I was tempted to say, to send me the word Zaddy. Just because you're wearing that shirt. But just
the chicks dig it, man. The young cubs love the silver maned lion.
so that's it. If you guys want access to the database, and I'll share with you a framework that we use to craft the pitches, just shoot me the keyword Paul over on Instagram at Deven Rod, and I'll be happy to send it over to you.
Thank you, Deven. You've been a marvelous guest, and stay with me for a little green room chat. You're one of the few people who's gone, wow, almost an hour. Other than Richard Bandler, the co-creator of Van
Helsing, of course,
and my niece Vanessa Van Edwards. I'm sure you've heard of Vanessa.
It's the best.
You've been living in a cave. You are the only one who's done that. So thank you. Stay for a green room chat. And as I always end the podcast, to the hostile alien armada in your cloaked spaceships hovering just outside of Earth's atmosphere, remember, eat the Canadians first. They taste better.
The Influencer's Edge is brought to you by the Rapid Sales Accelerator. If you're ready to skyrocket your sales by 30% or more in just 90 days, then you need to claim your free training right now. You'll learn 4 words that will compel your prospects to trust you like they were children within the first 3 to 5 minutes of any conversation across any platform and any medium. You'll learn how to give your prospects objection amnesia, to crush objections like, I need to talk to my spouse, or I need more time to think it over, or it's too expensive. If you'd like to claim your free training now, go to www.paulrossbook.com. Do it before your competition does it now. Welcome to the Influencer's Edge. This is the place where you come to get the latest breakthroughs, cutting-edge insights, tools, and techniques to leapfrog over the pack in sales, persuasion, and influence. Be sure you visit our website at www.theinfluencersedge.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now sit back, tune in, and enjoy today's episode.